Have you ever noticed someone who hugs everyone every time they meet, even when the other person stiffens or tries to lean away? It looks warm and harmless on the surface, but sometimes it's not just friendliness. Meghan Markle's hug everyone every time approach was praised early on as California warmth. But when you keep initiating touch after people show subtle cues like a quick flinch, a tight smile, or stepping back, that's crossing a boundary. Why does that matter? Because it quietly shifts control. It's saying, I decide how we interact, not you. Some staff even described it as looking flirty at times, but whether or not that was the intention, it put others in an awkward spot. Then came the same excuse. This is just how we do it in California. They're too cold. It flips the blame onto the people who wanted space, making them look uptight or unfriendly while keeping her image as the warm one. This is a classic manipulation tactic, crossing someone's boundary and then painting them as the problem. We're going to get into all this and so much more in this YouTube video, so stick around. But before we begin, here's the intro. Welcome to Revealing the Narc. Join me as I highlight narcissistic traits in celebrities and public figures. Everything here is in my opinion and not professional advice. If you enjoy the analysis, please like and subscribe. Hi everyone, welcome back. We are almost at 50,000, so we're getting there. We're less than 1,000 away from 50,000. So I want to thank you all for being here. Thank you all so much for the support. This video is it's a big one for me, and I'll get into why in a little bit, but it all started because I saw this article in the Daily Mail. It's not related to Harry and Meghan, but it reminded me, if you read through it, about Meghan's behavior towards other men. This particular article was titled "A Famous Friend Stole My Man." And what we're going to do, this video is going to be part of a two-part series. In the first part, we're going to talk about specifically Meghan hugging William and what that says. And then in the second part, I'm going to show you video clips of how Meghan behaves around other men. And we're going to go through this article talking about this woman's particular experience. So let's begin. The article we're going to talk about specifically in this video is titled "Meghan Markle's Constant Hugging Made Prince William Uncomfortable, Fueled Flirtation Gossip Around Palace." And this is what was said by staffers. It was published in page 6 on February 6, 2025. The article begins and says Meghan Markle was reportedly very touchy-feely with members of the royal family when she and Prince Harry still lived in the UK, and it made Prince William uncomfortable. Let's pause and talk about this a little bit, because being overly touchy-feely, it isn't just about being warm or friendly, because it can cause boundaries if it ignores someone else's comfort level. A hug, a hand on the shoulder, or even grabbing someone's arm might seem harmless to the person doing it, but if it's unwanted or unexpected, it can feel invasive. Respecting boundaries means paying attention to cues. If someone stiffens, steps back, or avoids touch, that's a sign to stop. Ignoring those signals isn't kindness, it's dismissing their right to personal space, and sometimes it's a subtle way of asserting control. What makes it worse is when the boundary breaker flips the story. Instead of owning that they crossed a line, they'll claim that the other person is cold or unfriendly, blaming them for not liking the unwanted touch. That shift in blame makes the person who simply wanted space look like the problem, when really it's about respecting consent. The article continues and says a junior staffer recalled Markle, Harry, William, and Catherine, once affectionately called the Fab Four, getting along well in the early days after the Sussexes tied the knot in 2018. And this is generally what happens when a narcissist first enters the picture. At first, it looks like the narcissist is getting along great with everybody, laughing at the inside jokes, pitching in, acting warm and helpful. That's because early on, they're in full charm mode, mirroring the family's humor and values, flattering everyone, and avoiding conflict so they can win trust. It's less about genuine connection and more about impression management. This honeymoon phase can fool everyone into thinking the relationship is solid, but once they feel secure in their place, the charm usually fades and the boundary testing begins. The article continues and says the employee mentioned seeing Markle and William even playfully dancing the jive. The article then says, however, tensions reportedly began to develop because of the suits Alam's warm, friendly, hug everyone approach, which caused William as well as King Charles III to flinch at times. This tactile manner made William uncomfortable because Meghan hugged him virtually every time they bumped into each other. What we're reading here is that both William and King Charles reacted negatively to the touch. That's a way of them trying to express their boundaries. And this is a way of Meghan ignoring their boundaries, like we were talking about earlier in this video. Narcissists often use physical touch as a social tool rather than an expression of genuine warmth. We've seen that with Meghan when she touches people, it doesn't look genuine or from an authentic place. It looks like she's trying to take advantage of the situation or she's playing it up for the cameras. At the same time, though, there is this sense of control or power that's being exerted on the other person, is setting the tone of saying, I decide how we interact. When someone keeps initiating touch despite subtle cues, like the flinching that we just heard about King Charles and William, or stiffening or leaning away, this is a boundary violation. The repetition, hugging every time they meet, even in quick passing, it signals that the hugger's comfort outweighs the other person. From a narcissistic supply angle, that hug everyone style can also be performative. It makes the hugger look warm and approachable to onlookers while putting the other person in an awkward spot. If they don't reciprocate, they appear cold. So in this case, the behavior isn't just about being affectionate. It's about controlling the social dynamic and using touch as both a public display of warmth and a subtle test of dominance over personal space. Now, let's take this one step deeper. So, what we've been talking about so far is when the hug is directed at everybody and it's a performance for the cameras. But what if that affection targets only one person? Although King Charles is mentioned in this article, the title of the article mentions about how it was William specifically who felt very uncomfortable. And I think from videos and everything, we've been witness to this that Meghan was crossing boundaries a lot, I think, with William, the way she would touch him and look at him. I mean, just being on the other side of the camera and watching that made me feel incredibly uncomfortable. So, what I think we're seeing here is covert flirtation wrapped as warmth. Repeatedly singling out William for hugs, even in passing, can act as a low risk form of flirtation. It's touch disguised as friendliness. It lets her test boundaries and gauge his reactions while keeping plausible deniability. We've seen her do this. She'll just say, oh, I'm just a hugger. There's boundary testing for power also that's happening here. If he shows discomfort, yet she keeps doing it, it becomes a way of eroding his ability to say no. Narcissists often push small boundaries first, like a casual touch, to see what they can get away with before escalating their behavior. There's potential for triangulation here. Being unusually tactile with one family member, especially in front of others, can create tension or awkwardness within the family. That friction can be exploited later. And this article will tell you, but Megan absolutely did this with Harry. She likely went to Harry and said, they're cold to me, or he overreacted to a harmless hug. It's creating division among the family, and it's a tool to separate and isolate Harry. And finally, there's control through public image. By appearing warm toward him in public, she positions herself as the friendly one and makes any discomfort he feels seem unreasonable or even rude. That can flip the narrative so that he's the one that looks standoffish if he resists. So this behavior on Megan's part can serve two purposes at once: covert flirtation and social boundary testing, both of which fit a narcissistic pattern because they prioritize her gratification and image over his comfort or the family dynamics. The article continues and says the hugging and cheek kissing fueled gossip among the staff that Meghan was flirting with William, Quinn alleged. So that's the royal biographer. And he continues and says, citing insiders, before noting that the Duchess was obviously not doing so. So let's pause here before we continue. From a narcissistic boundary angle, the flirting perception by staff reinforces that her tactile behavior wasn't just warmth. It was boundary pushing that created confusion, tension, and even gossip to her advantage. We know from reading this the behavior wasn't subtle. A truly innocent greeting usually looks neutral and context appropriate. If outsiders saw it and thought she's flirting with him, then the warmth likely went past ordinary family politeness into something more charged, whether that was because of frequency, body language, or timing. It shifts the social narrative. When others start believe that there's flirting happening, William's discomfort gains context. He's not just being cold, he's reacting to something that felt off. Meanwhile, Megan can still claim, I'm just naturally friendly, which leaves her blameless and puts him in a defensive spot. And finally, there's triangulation and power play. For a narcissistic personality, being seen as the warm, bubbly one while quietly stirring speculation or tension can be useful. It lets her control the storyline. I'm innocent and open, and they're the ones that are uptight. If staff are gossiping about possible flirting, it sows the seeds of drama and keeps the intention on her. I do want to mention here that Quinn, the author, had to mention that Megan was absolutely not doing so, or obviously not doing so. How does he know that? We have firsthand accounts of the insiders that were there, and they got the impression that Megan was flirting with him. And you pair that with the visual evidence that you and I have seen, and well, the story tells itself. The article continues and says the report also claimed Markle felt rejected by the dismissive attitude about her public displays of affection, stating that she was understandably hurt as everyone apparently hugs in California. This is so infuriating to me that everything always comes down to her being from California. Look, I'm from California. I don't mock curtsies. I don't pretend that meeting the royal family means going to medieval times, and I don't hug everybody. And we'll get into that in a minute, but what we're seeing here is that this move protects her persona. It's trying to make her look friendly and approachable while undermining the credibility of those who felt their boundaries were crossed. It keeps her in the role of the misunderstood victim instead of the person who ignores cues. It's an excuse by stereotype. By saying that this is just how we do it in California, she sidesteps personal accountability and shifts the blame to an entire region's norms. It implies that she isn't responsible. The other person is wrong for not accepting California warmth. It invalidates boundaries. Instead of respecting someone's discomfort, she reframes their boundary as an overreaction to her culture. It paints them as uptight or out of touch rather than someone with a right to their own comfort zone. There's guilt and image play happening here. Claiming to be hurt adds a victim narrative. I was only being friendly, and now I'm being the one who's misunderstood. This flips sympathy towards her, making the boundary holder seem mean or cold. And like we see all the time with Megan, there's a pattern of evasion. Using this same California excuse for other inappropriate behavior shows it's not about culture. It's a pattern of dismissing criticism while protecting her image as warm and inclusive. This is where we will end this article. We're going to talk about this, and this is I think this part might answer a lot of questions for people because so many people say, how come Harry didn't see it? Why hasn't Harry caught on? How did this isolation happen? Why didn't William and King Charles do something about it? Well, you're going to see now how subtly this type of isolation can happen. The article continues and says Quinn also claimed in the report that Markle once asked a staffer, why do William and Charles sound so serious all the time? And would allegedly also joke that Harry did not share the same parents as his older brother because he isn't pompous at all and is chill. The bubbling discord reportedly deepened the rift that already existed between Harry and William. Now, I'm going to go deep into detail about all of this, but I want to talk off the cuff here really quick. There have always been rumors about Harry's paternity. Although Meghan claims she knew nothing about the royal family, I don't believe that at all. I think she is weaponizing that story, that insecurity, that trigger in Harry to fuel the separation and make it seem like he's the odd one out. At the same time that she's creating isolation, she's throwing shade at her future, or it may have been present, brother in law and father in law. It's these types of comments, these types of things that happen that create the isolation. And it's so sad to see it happening, how easily Harry was manipulated. This is why I always say be very careful about the information you give to someone when you're on a date with them, especially in the beginning. Harry couldn't defend himself against that because, particularly, this story about his paternity was already out in the world. But notice how it's weaponized. It really makes me sick to my stomach. When I was first recognizing that I also had been in a marriage with a narcissist, one of the metaphors that was given was about how if you have a boiling pot of water and you take a frog and you put it in the boiling pot of water, it'll jump out immediately because it's such a harsh change in temperature that the frog recognizes. But if you put the frog in lukewarm water and you slowly start raising the temperature, the frog doesn't notice that it's getting hot and it doesn't try to escape. You all let me know if this is actually true behavior about frogs because I haven't looked it up, but the metaphor makes sense to me that it's the slight and these tiny increases in temperature. And before you know it, you are in boiling hot water. Okay, let's continue now. And I'm going to get into the more formal analysis that I have prepared for this article. So, what we're seeing here is that there is a blend of triangulation. It's pitting family members against each other. There's character assassination, painting others as cold or pompous, and emotional exploitation. It shifts loyalty back towards Meghan while weakening existing family ties, a classic isolation strategy. One of the first things we see here is this undermining of family bonds. By joking that the brothers couldn't share the same parents because one was chill and the other's pompous, she's planting a wedge between them. It frames William as cold and arrogant and Harry as the good one, which can make Harry feel closer to her and more alienated from his own family. She's exploiting existing insecurities. Knowing that there were already rumors about Harry's paternity, that comment isn't harmless. It taps into a deeply sensitive wound. It subtly suggests maybe he really is different, which can deepen self doubt and resentment towards his family. There's isolation by ridicule. Calling King Charles and William serious all the time makes them sound humorless and unfriendly, encouraging staff and even her partner to see them as the problem. This can isolate Harry from his support system. And finally, there's gaslighting through humor. Because it's delivered as a joke or casual observation, it's easy for her to deny ill intent if confronted. She could say, I was just kidding. That's a common tactic to disguise boundary pushing or hurtful comments. This is where part one will end. We'll pick up part two and go through this particular article of this woman's experience with a woman who lacks boundaries and has envy and wants what her friend has, something that unfortunately many of us have experienced in our own friendships. And I'm also going to show you in part two some videos of Meghan acting inappropriately towards other men while she was already in relationships. Let me be more specific, in committed romantic relationships. So let me know what your thoughts are on this video. I think this is such a big and important topic to notice these subtle boundary violations that are happening here, and then the gaslighting and the excuses used to flip the script. I feel this is so important for us to uncover and recognize in our own relationships. If you feel comfortable sharing, please drop your thoughts in the comments. If this was interesting to you, please like and subscribe. Hit that notification bell so you'll know every time I drop a new video. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video and you're looking for a meaningful way to support something beyond the screen, I'd love for you to consider making a donation to the National Domestic Violence Hotline in lieu of super chats and super stickers. They provide 24/7 support and resources for people in unsafe or overwhelming situations, whether that's emotional, physical, or just hard to name. Their information is on the screen should you need to contact them, and you'll find the link to donate in the description of this video. Every little bit helps, and it means a lot. Thank you again for watching, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye, everybody.